Hey guys, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but I am one of those people who does not listen to Christmas music before Thanksgiving. I think it's sacrilegious. But if you're one of those people, I love you anyways. But now that Turkey Day is over, I am plunging in with the rest of you and enjoying the Christmas season. Because I find that every year, maybe it's because I don't listen to Christmas music before Thanksgiving, but it's usually like two weeks before Christmas and I suddenly realize I've been so busy. I wanted to spend time thinking about the importance of Christmas, but I just haven't had time to get around to it. And so this year I decided it was going to be different. I was going to spend some time thinking about Advent, which is historically the month before Christmas that Christians think and prepare to celebrate for the first coming of Jesus. So side note, rolling out this Monday is going to be a series of Advent meditations that you can subscribe to your email, and I am so excited about this. I can't even contain my excitement. But if you are interested in scripture and art and spending about 10 minutes every day thinking through why we celebrate Advent, this is for you. So there's a link below and you can sign up for that. But Advent is something that I didn't grow up with, and it kind of seemed like it was just the month before Christmas where Christians would crawl back to the Old Testament, find some really obscure verse, and say, oh look, this applies to Jesus. How nice. And it just seemed totally out of context, and the rest of the chapter didn't have anything to do with Jesus, and it just confused me. But this year, as I've been thinking proactively, I've been spending some time looking at those verses and thinking about the people those verses were given to and the context around them. And what I've discovered is that those weren't obscure promises. They were promises given to real people with really desperate situations. And those promises that we pull out were actually meeting a need that they had. So let's just take a couple minutes and look back at what those were. So the first promise is given to Adam and Eve in Genesis 3 on the day they rebelled against God. Everything is crumbling around them. Their rebellion has initiated thousands and thousands and thousands of years of abuse and pain and oppression. And on that day, God gives them the promise that even though they listened to the serpent and got themselves into this whole mess, that one of their descendants will crush that serpent's head and all evil with it. I don't know about you, but if I had just broken God's pristine, beautiful new world and was responsible for all that, that would be a promise I would need to hear. So then we fast forward to, we don't really know how long, but to about 2100 BC. And we find Abram, who God reveals himself to. Abram believes in God, even though he's the only one in his city that believes in this God. And he follows this God to a new land. And he spends his whole life homeless, an immigrant, in a world where land is what matters and he doesn't possess any. And to this man, God gives a promise that his descendants will inherit the land that he's in. That's a promise he needed to hear. But God goes even above and beyond that and promises that one of his descendants will bless every nation in the world. And that descendant will be the reason that every human being can have a permanent home. That's a message that an immigrant and a homeless person would need to hear. So then we fast forward again to about 1440 BC. The people of God have just been freed from slavery in Egypt, which is awesome. But there's thousands of them milling around in the desert. They have no sustainable agriculture. They have no economy. They have no justice system in place. They haven't needed those things because they've just been slaves under the care of the Egyptians. And so what are the chances that these thousands of people will stay united and stay viable in this desert? And so God speaks to them from a mountain, audibly, with a voice they can hear, and it is so overwhelming that they beg him to stop. Now that seems like a bad thing, like they should have let God speak. But in Deuteronomy 18, God actually agrees with them. He says, yeah, they asked me to stop speaking, and okay, so what I'll do instead is send a human messenger who will bring them my message, who will show them how to live and thrive in this world. That was a message that those newly freed slaves needed to hear. that God would come in a way that wouldn't kill them, in a way that they could hear and appreciate where they were at. And we know that points to Jesus. So fast forward to about 1010 BC, and we've got the little nation of Israel that's in the land like God promised, but its borders are really insecure. And they've got a new king who has very little political experience. It's King David, and he spent his whole adolescence and early adulthood taking care of sheep, and then he spent the last couple years fleeing for his life as a political enemy. And so he's before God saying, like, God, how can I keep this nation of yours safe? How can I rule this nation? And to him, God gives a promise that not only will the nation be safe, but David will have a descendant who will rule the throne forever. I mean, that's a guarantee of like things going good. And we know that that descendant is actually Jesus. So then we fast forward to about 700 BC, and the prophet Isaiah is telling the people of God how they're going to be sent into exile because they have just been blowing God off. They've been offending him in every possible way and disregarding everything he has to say about loving other people, worshiping him. They're just like, they couldn't care about God less. So they're going to be sent into exile. Tons of them are going to be killed. Their identity as a nation is going to be threatened. And God promises to those people on the brink of like devastating situation that one day he will send a child who will rule them, who will be a prince of peace and a mighty God and an everlasting father, and all these terms that describe just the perfect ruler. Then we fast forward to about 500 and something BC. The people are in exile. They have lost tons of family members. They're scattered across the known world. Everything that they value, they have lost. And to those people, God promises, hey, there's going to be a day when I'm going to bring you back into the land. And not just that, I'm going to rule over you. I'm going to be living with you. Everything will be set right. To a people who are forced into another land, who have lost their national identity almost, that was a promise they needed to hear. So during Advent, we look at these verses in the Bible that might seem obscure, but in reality, they were given to people who had very specific needs in desperate situations. And those promises that we know point to Jesus were actually meeting specific needs that they had. And so when we spent time to think about it, we realize that we're not that different than these people. We're living in the midst of lives that are crumbling, relationships that are strained, the grief of people that we have lost. Some people in our world are fleeing for their lives. They're homeless. They've lost their community and their cultural identity. They're trying to just barely survive in a new country. We are people who, like Adam and Eve, Moses, David, the Israelites, we need a God who is going to come and set all things right. And so during Advent, we actually look back to them and identify with them, and with them look forward to these promises of a God who's going to come and set things right. From our vantage point, we know that he's already come once to set things in motion, and that's why Jesus came at Christmas time. And so we celebrate that God has actually started to make good on his promises. But with them, we also look beyond the nativity to the time when Jesus is going to come again. And this time he's not going to just come as a baby. He's going to come as a king, and he is going to make good on all those promises. These promises we think about at Advent, we need just as much as the people in the Bible needed. So I hope you spend some time thinking about that this Advent. And if this interests you at all, don't forget to sign up for Advent meditations. Hope you have a great month, and hopefully I'll see you soon.